Welcome to Straight Out of Savannah. I am super excited. My guest Zinnia is here and she is going to share who she is, what she does, and how she can help you. So, Zinnia, take it away.
Hello. Yeah. So I s- I've been doing this for not that long. I didn't even realize that it was anything unusual. But I've been working in like the tech field for about going close to 20 years at this point. Been working as an Oracle database administrator and doing quite well doing that for a long time. But I feel like ever since I had kids, I've been really just feeling a bit disconnected from it. But I continue to do it because, it pays well and I'm naturally, I guess, kind of have an affinity for it and pretty good at it. So it got to a point where my cut, okay, so I'll go back a little bit, but I guess about 4 years ago, I started working with my ancestors a bit more. And I've been learning that most other cultures work with their ancestors and venerate them and honor them. And we don't, it's considered kind of strange here in the United States. And um,
How did
I'm
you decide to do that?
I was, I guess I could be honest, but I was drawn to hoodoo, to be honest. And
Yeah.
so there's a big element of it there. And so I just set up like a little mini altar and started meditating in front of it and giving them offerings as far as like, say I made a good meal and I'd give them a plate, or if I'm out walking, I'll pick flowers. But I kept kind of seeing people in some of my groups talking about how they could actually, their ancestors were talking to them. And so I
Mm.
was like, you can talk to them, huh? And so one day I was just meditating and I remember hearing like internally, like not outside of my body, but I heard like a woman and she had an accent. It was like a southern type of accent. And it's because I had asked to speak to one of my ancestors. And so she came through and gave me her name, her first name, and I didn't recognize it. And turns out it's because I don't really know my mother's mother. So that's my grandma. I never met her. Sorry, I
Okay.
met her when I was like two, but I don't remember.
Right.
Um, and so then they lost contact with her because she kind of disappeared and had some kind of mental illness. And so my mom used to fly to Chicago and try to look for her and was so upset about it for years and couldn't find her. And so she told me her name, and so I didn't recognize it. And then she told me what she used to do for a living, and I was like, okay. And then we just developed a relationship because I really got into herbalism because of her. So, my kids had asthma at the time, and they just were continuously sick, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. It was around COVID time, and I didn't want them on like all those medications all the time that the doctor kept trying to give them. So she'd give me like recommendations on like how to fight the flu and all these things. And so that's how I have like this really good cold and flu formula that I like send to my sister because she uses it on my nephew and she loves it. My family uses it. But anyways, so then one day I was like with my mom and I just stopped and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, what's your mom's name? And then she told me and I was like, oh, and I was like, what did she used to do for a living? And then she told me, and I was like, I've been speaking to her. And she was like, what? And so that's the way we found out that she had passed, unfortunately. And so she works with me a lot now. And so then over those 4 years, I kind of would talk to her from time to time, and a few other family members would come through. But I didn't know it had a title. I didn't know it was called mediumship. I didn't know any of that and so like when we had family members pass, I would just kind of mention like, oh yeah, I spoke to them and they'd be like, okay, and like would kind of blow me off a little bit. My aunt believed me. And so when we had a really big problem in November with her daughter, who's my cousin, and she's only 30, and she ended up in the hospital with like a brain aneurysm. So we were all really devastated. I flew to Virginia to be there, and I was just kind of expecting her to be okay and stuff. But I started talking to her because she was in a coma, and I was able to talk to her. So I was a little concerned then because I was under the assumption if I could speak to you, then you had passed.
Yeah.
And so eventually it got to a point where she went really downhill and then we had to decide like were we going to donate her organs, like we had to take her off of life support and let her pass. And my aunt was really distraught. And she was like, "Can you please talk to her and ask her, if she wants to donate her organs and how she wants her body to be treated and all that kind of stuff." And so we did that. And she told me like she wanted to be cremated and told me all these details. And I was like, okay. So then when I told her and her brothers, my aunt and her brothers, they were all really appreciative and really, and I could see like how much peace it kind of brought them because my cousin was telling us like stop staring at my body because we were just sitting there crying around her body, um, up to all the machines, and she was like, I'm not in it, and she kept giving us signs like when we were all separately in our different states, she was flashing lights and she knocking things off my, doing all kinds of stuff to show us that we were around, but it wasn't just me, it was all of us. And so by then we all believed. And so then it just brought them a lot of peace. And so we were able to kind of make the decision. It was really hard, but at least we knew she was okay, right? And
Yes.
after that, I went home back to Washington. I was like, really just started thinking, and this was just November. And I was just like, can I do this for other
November
people?
24th?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that is new.
And
Oh,
so it
wow.
was back then, and then I was like playing around on Reddit, and I found like a medium group because then I started watching Tyler Henry, and I was like, oh, that's what a medium. And I was like, and a lot of stuff he was doing, I was like, oh, that's what I could. I was like, that's what I've been doing. And so then like I saw he was doing the scribbling thing, so I started doing that for a little while. But he gave me some tips, and so I decided to try it on someone else, and so I just like found somebody on Reddit, and we'd met, set up a time to like talk on the phone. And so it was like the night before, and I was like, okay. And I saw that Tyler kind of pre-connects. So I was like, I'm going to pre-connect and see who it is they want to talk to because I had no idea. I don't know the person. I didn't know her name. I didn't know anything really. And so then this mail comes through and really strong and was just like telling me their name. And I was like, okay, Brian. And then I spelled it Bryan on the paper. And he was like, no. He's like Brian. And I was like, okay. And then he kept showing me like a mountain and falling off a mountain. I was like, I'm gonna look crazy tomorrow because I was like, I know you didn't die falling off of a mountain, but I was like, okay. So I was just writing down whatever he told me. And then I got on the call the next day with her, and I was already like really anxious because I'd never done it with a stranger. And I was like, well, who is it that you want to talk to? And then she was like, well, my mom and my dad. And I was like, oh, okay, what are their names? Because I don't really work by people just coming through. I kind of like to target who it is we're supposed to talk to.
Gotcha.
And so she was like,
And you can do
Brian.
that?
Mhm. And
That
so,
is interesting. I never actually thought about that because for me, people just show up. And I thought that was, you know what I mean? Because I not even know. I took a course, the lady, she didn't want us to pre-link. But for
yeah,
me, that was difficult.
but see, since I haven't been through courses or anything, it's just what I do, is how I do it. And so she said, she said, I want to talk to my dad, Brian. And I was like, I froze. And then I got these chills. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, it was funny because I'm supposed to be like the medium, like, you know, knowing what they're doing. And so I was like, "Oh my God." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "He's been talking to me." And I was like, "It's on this paper. I wrote his name." I was like, "Is it spelled Brian?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "He corrected me." And she was like, "Oh, that sounds like him." She's like, "He's very, very forceful." And I was like, "I know." I was like, "He got frustrated with me earlier because I wasn't," he's like, "You're not listening." Because I was doubting everything he was saying. So then I showed her the picture I had drawn of like a mountain and someone falling off of it. And I was like, he didn't pass like that, did he? And she was like, no, that was me. She was like, I fell off of the mountain 2 years ago. And she's like, no one knew that. So she's like, so then she started crying. She's like, he knew, and I was just like, had chills, And so that's kind of how it started. But the whole conversation was like, I didn't know about boundaries energetically and all that. So like I was crying with her and I was like, I don't know them. And it was really awkward, but they were crying through me. But she was like, it was amazing seeing her parents had died like years ago, but it was amazing seeing like how sad she still was over it and how much better it made her feel knowing that they were okay. And then they gave me information that like I said, I don't even know what she looks like or anything, but they gave me information that, like the evidential mediumship type stuff. And I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but they were giving validating information. So she knew that that was indeed them. So it was beautiful. So it was a great session for her because she got like to get the closure that she needed. But it was great for me because I also got to like know that like, oh, you can do this for other people. And so that's how that started. But then I've been learning a lot because I thought that you could only speak to the departed, right? And then I learned that you can speak to everything. I didn't know
Yes,
you could living people's spirits. I didn't know you could speak to
yes,
crystal. You can talk to the ocean. You
yeah.
can talk to deities have been
And talk
coming.
to your water.
Yeah, but like it talks
I've
back.
been doing that. I'm like, so amazing. It's a whole, okay, so to quote one of my most amazing movies of all times, a whole new world.
Yeah, it really is because every time I turn around, there's something that I try to talk to and it talks back to me, which is insane. And
I was gonna
so
say, was that scary though at first though? Or
I
just
would
or just odd?
be surprised at how non-scary this is because I thought like speaking to the dead would be frightening. It's not at all.
But speaking to the living is more frightening to me.
And the most more confusing, honestly. Except for living animals. Living animals are not confusing. They're very straightforward, but people is a bit confusing. But yeah, it's just the amount of things. And then finally one day I was like, if I can speak to all these things and they can speak back, like what about creator, right? And so I started wondering that, and then boom, I heard that, and I was like, what? And like I was expecting like a booming voice and this big dramatic thing and tears and all
You was
that.
expecting James Earl Jones
I guess so, but it wasn't like that. But the message was really profound and
or
very,
who's the other guy? Morgan Freeman.
either way, it was confusing. The message I got was like, it was something like, let your love leave no one behind, like basically love all of creation. And I was like, but what about the rapist and the murder? And like, there's no, you love
No
them all.
separation.
That's basically what I've been learning is
Yeah,
like,
me too.
all creators and everything. So that's why I can talk. That's what they said was that I can talk to everything and it can talk back because they're in everything. And I was like, oh, so that's been crazy.
Yeah, that's a whole ass journey.
Fast though, so fast.
And yeah, it's like because I feel like this is like, I think you could probably study this stuff for years. And then all of a sudden, one simple shift or one timeline jump, things just come together. And you're like, oh my God, you know. And it's amazing to see and to watch, and hearing your story is like, wow, this is amazing. So talk about the animals, girl. Let's talk about the animals.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dr. Doolittle.
Well, I've been explaining this as like because I didn't even know I was psychic, so I didn't call myself that.
Didn't
I
know
did
you was.
No, I didn't discover it till I started speaking to other people's like relatives, and then I get like flashes like right before someone would say something, I get the flash of the knowledge, right? And so like I'd be like, well, how did they pass? And then like I'd flash IED explosion, then the person would literally say IED like literally like seconds later. And then I started seeing, I didn't know I could see things, I could see visions of things, and I get these crazy. So like I didn't know. So you know how they say that saying, every psychic is every psychic is not a medium, but every medium is psychic or something like
Yeah,
that.
every
But I
medium
don't,
is psychic, but not every psychic's a medium.
but I didn't know that. I had no idea because
But
it's not
when
my
did you
fault, right?
start with these gifts?
No, like for well, I guess the clairaudience, what I've been hearing my relative that within the past 4 years, like that's one of the clairs I knew about, but the rest of them I didn't know. And so I don't know if they all of a sudden came online as I've been doing this, but I don't think so. I think they've been there, I just didn't trust it and didn't know. So
Yes.
honestly, I have no idea. So it's really strange for me to be calling myself psychic now, but I can't deny it at this point.
No. Mhm.
So I guess I am, right? But like,
The thing
it's
is we don't have to accept the labels, is what I tell people. Like, we
okay,
don't have to accept the labels, even though people are, because they label everything now. Years ago, you didn't have all that. You had healers,
right.
and healers. composed of lots of different things. You know, you had the hands-on healers, you had the clairvoyant healers, and the whatever kind of healers, and the ones that do different things, and whatever. But they're all healers. But now, everything has a label.
Exactly. So I feel like they come online as I need them, is what it
Yes.
seems like. I didn't know I had the one where you could taste things until I started doing psychic detective work. And then I tasted like a coppery taste in my mouth. And I was like, oh, so they were hurt around their head. There was like a gunshot wound or whatever. And then turns out that was true. But like, it's just not something I guess I've been blocking them or didn't know, or I have no idea, to be honest. But okay, so the animal things is I have a friend, this woman I've been working with for like 10 years, like she was my psychic. And so I said I didn't know. And so but she told
Wait,
me,
you had a psychic and she didn't tell you that you were psychic?
yeah, actually, well, she didn't say I was psychic. She told me 10 years ago, she was like, wait till you come into your confidence and your gifts start to show up. She's like, she predicted this thing and she was like, you're going to be, I don't want to, I'm not trying to sound arrogant or anything like that, but she just
No,
said,
no.
she goes, you're going to become huge. And I was like, huge doing what though? And she was like, you'll see. And I was like, what are you talking? So whatever. So then one day, like after this happened in November, I went to her and I was like, what is going on? What's been happening? She's like, oh, finally. She's like, I told you years ago. And I was like, what? And she was like, but you wouldn't have believed me. And I was like, oh, okay. But like she believed me from day one. And so she started mentoring me.
So what
And
made you go to the psychic to begin with?
back in the day,
Yeah, because you
uh,
said you've been with her for a while.
just dumb boy stuff back in the day, probably. I
Oh,
mean, honestly, it's a long time ago. But I really liked her. So like she and I stayed in contact and like she's helped me through so much um over the years. And so I just talk to her a few times a year and like, but I love her to death. Like she whenever we talk, it's for a long time. So with the mentoring thing, like it's funny because like I almost felt like I was like, yeah, I feel like you believe in me more than I do myself. And she was like, I told you. She's like, I've been waiting for this. And I was like, okay. So one day she was like, I mentioned I was in some psychic class that just some random one that I tried, and she was like, and the woman mentioned talking to animals, and I was like, so I talked to my lady because I knew she could talk to animals, and I was like, what does that mean? I was like, what do I do? She was like, I'll send you. She was in the middle of doing like some readings at some bookshop and she sent me a photo of her dog and was like, just read my dog real fast. And I was like, okay, it's practice. So then I like closed my eyes and zoned in, kind of like I do with mediumship. And it started talking back to me. And it sounded like, but it sounded different. It talked really fast. It was really excited. And it sounded like the dog from that movie Up, where it's like, and then I went and got my ball. And then it was like that. And I was like, it was the cutest thing ever, but like it told me like its favorite ball, and it told me like it gets too hot, and it told me all kinds of stuff. So I just wrote it all down and then sent it to her, and she's like, "Oh," and she's like, "That's not him though. You got my dog Beauty that passed away." And I was like,
shit.
oh, so that happens is sometimes like I'll target one and then something else will sneak in and I don't because I can't like visually see, I just hear and I get the visions, but they're not showing me themselves. So like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. But I was in love with it right from then because it was so cute and it was just so simple, like it was but they do snitch on their owners. They tell you things about their owners and they tell you like if the owner cries and like I talked to a buddy one time and she was like, "Yeah, she cries into my fur." And I was like, "Am I supposed to say that?" And a lot of stuff, like you said, some of the stuff you hear, you're like, "I don't know, I feel comfortable completely saying that," because they will snitch on you sometimes. But for the most part, I mean, the level of accuracy has been shocking to me and like I'll sense because I just close my eyes and like zone in and listen to everything they have to say and they show me visuals and but a lot of the times I just feel crazy, because they'll like I had a dog recently that like showed me a metal fence and then because he even said he was like, let me show you something. And I was like, okay. And so then it showed me this metal fence and then it kept giving me this clanging noise and said it scared them. And I was like, okay. And then to me, I'm like, I'm about to look crazy again because I was like, I don't know if they have a metal fence. And so I've got this whole report based upon this metal fence, but we'll see. And so then I tell them, she's like, yeah, we have a metal fence. And I'm like, oh. And
So it's
then
a
later,
live, it was a live dog?
yeah. And
Okay.
then she's like, well, I don't know. what the sound is though. And then she messaged my mother-in-law, who sent, that's who sent her to me a few days later. And she was like, I figured out what the sound is. And I was like, oh, okay. They never told me, but they came back and were like, our lives have changed. Our lives have changed so much ever since the reading, and that the dog is so much happier now because basically her dog was communicating that it it was getting pushed out by another dog. And so the dog was taking, like, wasn't getting enough one-on-one attention. And he kept saying, I was her first baby, all these things I don't know. And then she was like, yeah, she's like, that was my first dog. It was my first baby. And he was like, I need one-on-one time with her and I need to get out and run more. Please take me out on walks more and interact with me more. And so they do all that. And so
Like
they're
a
just,
child.
huh?
I said, that's like a child.
Yeah, but when you look at the breed, though, it's like a husky mix, and those things like to go, and they need, and so they, but I guess like he used to nip at her, and like that has completely stopped. And she said the dog is so happy now, and like their family's happy because they get out more and exercise more with the dog, and so that's why I'm falling in love with it because it's giving like a voice to those who don't have a voice, which mediumship it does too also. But like the animal thing is like they really need help.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, even my dog, I was like, can I talk to my dog? And so I did it. And it just told me some simple things that we could do to change and make it happier. And he's like, I want to go with you more. And I was like, but you can't go inside most places. He's like, I don't care. I just want to come. And I was like, okay. So we do that and we change his food and he's happier. But like that's kind of my thing lately is just it's speaking to them. And I've gotten all kinds. I've done like red bunnies and I haven't done bird yet, but I did cow. The cow one was like crazy accurate. I was like, I give her a long thing of everything I got. And I was like, what didn't resonate? She was like, nothing. And I was just, that's part's hard for me to believe. But like the horse I did yesterday, same thing. I was like, what didn't resonate? She was like, nothing. And my husband's like, can you just accept that? And I was like, I just, how can it be nothing though? It's just with mediumship, occasionally you get like some details wrong, but like the animals, I don't know if I'm meant to do it or what, because it like,
You're meant to do it.
I guess so. They very much equipped me for
You're
it.
meant to do it. I mean, because if you can be accurate with the animals, and the other part is too, we have to also think about this. Are we wanting to be accurate from an egoic point of view?
Probably, right?
And so once we push that to the side or kick it across the road or put it in the ground or whatever, maybe stomp on it like they used to talk about stomping on the devil's head. Just, do something with it and not be concerned about that because you're clearly meant to do this work.
I guess so. And then the part that made me like tell them give my job notice was that I didn't even know I had guides until I was doing some meditation. It was like the middle of the night. I'd woken up and tried to go back to sleep, and one of them slid in and came in, and I was like, "Hi," and they gave me like the date that I needed to be leaving my job by and why I needed to. And I was arguing with him, and he was like, just do it. So finally, at one point, I was like, you know what? I've been feeling like for couple of years, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And now I finally like understand possibly why. And so I did it. But I'm sure it sounds crazy to some of my relatives and my family and stuff. But surprisingly, my mom is crazy supportive.
I was
And
going to ask you about that.
because I finally did a session with her because I think she was kind of on the fence in the beginning, but then I did a session with her mother, my grandma, the one who works with me all the time. But I was worried about doing so. I was like, I talk to you so much. I'm worried I know too much. But like it went really well. And my mom was like, knew for sure that like this was what I'm supposed to be doing. And my aunt, she's converted too. So you probably met her at the site, the
Yeah,
med.
yeah, yeah. She's very, very sweet.
She was on the fence at first too until finally did a session with her and her daughter. Because when we do the actual sessions, I feel like that's like the most convincing as opposed to me coming to you and being like, oh yeah, she said this, you know. And so it's nice being surrounded by like the friends and family that I have that really do believe in it and kind of help prop me up and keep me going.
Girls, you got PR for days. I was so impressed. I was so impressed because I'm like, my God. And I always, look to see us in those spaces. And so when I looked up and I seen you, and then I think it was your aunt first and then your husband, and I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And the fact that you have all of that support. Because most of the time when we step out to do this work, a lot of times we don't often have the support,
Right.
because people still regard this in a different way if they were raised, in any of those cults. And so they're like, oh, this is, somebody actually told me, you doing the devil's work.
Yeah.
I
I
said, no,
have some
I'm doing
family
God's work.
very religious and they're just like, oh, okay, and looking at me like that. But I'm not, my job is I'm not interested in convincing everybody. I need to mainly make sure I'm convinced and I believe. And the people that I work with and that have I've seen have a very positive, I can't think of many sessions that I've had that don't end up with a really positive like effect afterwards. And that's all I really care about because I'm not interested in doing it if it's not benefiting, anyone else because it benefits me if it benefits you, basically. Gives me purpose.
I love that. That is, to me, that is, whew, that's the way you blow up, because I feel like it's, it's so many people out there that are selfish with this stuff, and to me, I really don't understand it because I'm not that way. I mean, so I don't have like a concept of that, but I've seen it, and my thing is, no, I mean, I'm gonna come from a place of love always. When you do this work, have you had occasion to find, when you work with people that maybe maybe they weren't as open as they portrayed? So like when you're,
Yeah. Trying to make sure I don't relay who they are, but someone who was actually kind of higher up
Mhm.
doing for the government came to me at one of the metaphysical fairs and she was so closed off. And it was I was amazed I was able to get a read on her because it's a two-way thing. You can't, if you're closed
Yeah,
off, it's hard to read. But
yes.
I was able to, and she walked away feeling like very impressed, but like her face, you couldn't tell. So the whole time she was just like, she kept screwing her face up, and I was like, okay, so everything I'm saying is not landing. So, and then at the end though, she was like, that's crazy. And I was like, what? And she was like, you told me that you saw me writing a book. And I was like, yeah, that's just what they told me, what your guide said. And she was like, but I keep hearing that. And I was like, why did your face look like that? She was like, oh, I was just thinking. And I was like, good Lord. So then she sought me out. So then she sought me out later for a mediumship reading and we booked. And then so we had our session. It was actually not too long ago. And um, out of all of that's why it's my worst one. Out of all the mediumship readings that I've had for people that are not family or friends, like that have been actual like sessions, they've all gone very well, which is still, to me just like shocking. But with her, I know 100% that I got the person she was looking to speak to, but like even the details that he was giving me was not enough for her, and I was just like, I don't know what to tell you. So finally at the end, I was like, I kind of ended it and I was like, well, I was like, it's completely fine. I was like, but we're gonna have to, I was like, I'll just refund you, right? And she was like, oh, you don't have to. I was like, no, no, I want to. I want to make sure you got something out of it. But like I could have argued and been like, I know I got them, but like it didn't matter. It was more like I need you to feel good. But like it was funny because like her
Listen, it
face,
wasn't about you. That's the
yeah,
thing.
her face
So
was,
many people do that. It's like, this is not about you. This is about them.
yeah. So her face was not the whole time, and it actually throws you off. And because
I know.
I was just like, this is not, and then like he gave me all these details, and she was like, yeah, but anybody could be like tall. And I was like, and he said to me, heart attack. And I was like, oh, he had a heart attack. Yeah, but he was a big guy. So most big, it's not weird that they would have a heart attack. And I was just like, okay. And then he told me that she confides things in him. And she was like, yeah, but that's it. And I was just like, okay. I don't know what else to tell you.
Some of those people are like that, I have found, and it's like, to me, it's like, why did you even come?
And well, it's funny because when I was like, well, it sounds like I couldn't get him. I was like, I feel like I did. She's like, I don't know. I was like, well, if I didn't, it's okay. And I was like, well, and when I told her, I was like, I'll refund you. She was like, I feel like this is my fault, is what she said. So she knew. She was like, I went to a fair a couple days ago, and
You almost want to say it was your fault and you know it.
I
I've started doing that now. I didn't
I,
mean to.
I didn't tell her that, but I was just like, I was like, I'm newer to this. So, I'm not, I think I'm pretty good just for being natural, but like, I'm sure there's maybe someone more seasoned that could give you more of like what you need. And so I was like, I actually referred her to somebody and I was like, try
I
her.
was gonna
And
say that's what I do. I'd be like, you know what? I don't think I'm the person for you. I said, but I really realize that you need help. But
yeah.
this person here, they specialize in whatever the fuck it is you need.
That's what I said. So I was like, if they can't get somebody for you and you're still can't be convinced, then like it probably is and not in like a mean way, but like you might need to open yourself up a little bit because I definitely had your uncle and he was getting frustrated because he was like, I'm new at this. And I was like, I don't know what else. And I was like, I was like, it's okay. And I told her, I was like,
When
I
you
was
was
like,
new,
yeah, I was like, did he pass recently? And she was like, yeah, within like the past year. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, he's telling me he's new at this. And she was like, oh, and she still looked not convinced. I was like, I don't know what else to tell you. So yeah, I've definitely had it. And I'm not going to act like it doesn't throw me off. It does for sure when you're like, newer and all that. But I have
doesn't
to,
throw you up if you're not new.
so
I'm
I,
telling
I
you,
keep
people,
track.
because you're like, I know I got him. I know I got him, and it's one of those balancing things where you're trying to balance the ego out with, am I actually, giving evidence and all this stuff, and am I, are they able to validate what I'm doing and da 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 da. So it's that balancing, it's like a seesaw,
Well, that's what
you
would be
keep
nice
balancing.
if other people that do this would be honest about that and be like, I have terrible sessions sometimes, or I have, or I have dead on ones, but like you feel like there's this pressure because you're like, I've got to be perfect every time and get it right every time. And then I finally started realizing, like, girl, out of all the ones that you get right, you focus on like the two that didn't go well.
That's
And
right.
then and that can throw you off your path completely. And you're like, oh, why am I doing this? And my
No, I'm
husband,
not, I'm not good. I can't do it. Blah, blah. You don't watch Tyler Henry and what's that other woman? The Long Island Medium,
right.
meet the show Medium.
And they're
And
never wrong. That's how they edit it.
no,
And
they're
so
never wrong. No.
I'm starting to understand that. And I actually keep track of like, and I actually start doing gender, speaking to people's unborn babies also, and I can feel what their gender is. And so I've saved all those validations that I get and save all of the animal reading feedbacks, all of the feedback for everything I do, so that when I get into that space and say like the wrong person comes through or something, I can push through it and be like, look at this, and you're looking at this, like
The
move
other
on.
thing too is sometimes the people that they want to come through are not the ones that are going to come through.
I've noticed
You
that.
you can't, people say they can control it, but I don't believe that. I mean, I believe you can say and state and set intention for, Uncle John to come through or Aunt Sally or grandmama or whoever. But if Cousin Bill wants to come through, sometimes Cousin Bill will come through.
Yep, I've had that happen occasionally. Most of the time I can get who we're looking for, but not always.
That's what I'm
Occasionally
saying. Not
that.
always, because sometimes it's just like that. Like I did a circle one time and one of my people that came through was like an ancient ancestor, like one of my ancient shamanic ancestors that, of course, I can't validate,
That's the problem. You can't
but I
validate.
felt it,
Yeah.
within me. That was my validation for me. But I can't validate that. I mean, because they're ancient. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know my great great grandfather. You know what I mean? So it's like
The thing
you
I've
talk
seen
about some way back in the 1400s or something. I can't validate that.
someone come through on one of those bikes that have that giant wheel and like this,
Yeah.
and they were like, I don't know, so I'm
Wasn't
just
that like the 1800s or something?
so long ago. And I was like, oh, well, it was a practice circle we were doing anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's funny because it's like, who can take that? Like, who knows? You know?
Right. It's like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know my first mediumship reading that I went to, I went to a demonstration and it was the first thing, like I had never experienced it or anything. Not in that way. Like I had my own experiences as a child, but not in this way. So I went to a demonstration, and the girl, she said that she was bringing my grandfather through,
Mhm.
but I don't know who she brought through, but it wasn't my grandfather.
Okay.
But I was kind, so I didn't really, I validated what I could, but what she was saying, I was like, nah, that was my grandfather. Some of the things. Now she was like, he's a first she was like, he's a big man. I'm like, I am 5 feet tall. My grandfather's probably 5'7". I was like, no, big to
Well,
me.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I know quite a few mediums now, and I don't have it on all day. So like I don't interact with people and say like you have somebody with you like that. But people say that to me all the time. They'll be like, there's two people with you, one of them, and they'll describe them and I'm like, huh. And so like, but I don't function like that. Like as I'm looking at you, I don't even let that info come through. So you don't either. Okay.
No. Only
Okay.
time typically is sometimes when I'm doing this, I'll see something, like you'll be saying something and I'll say, yeah, you need to do blah, 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 because that's what I heard them say. But no, like people just, no, like people come up to people in the grocery stores and all that kind of, I know, because to me, I think that's invasive.
Me too. And so that's the thing with like even psychic readings. Like I don't ever read anybody even on act. Like even if I don't tell you, I don't try. I don't feel like it's ethical and I don't want you reading me without me asking you to. Okay. Because I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh, I feel this tightness around your throat chakra." And I'm like, "But I didn't ask you." Like I wouldn't do that to somebody else. I don't want you to do that
And
to me.
why?
Well, I feel like some people naturally can just naturally like they're getting all that input all the
Maybe, but they're not, like I tell people, I'm like, I can't be in your energy without your permission.
Okay. Okay. So you function like I do then, because
Yeah,
I
but
know
to
throwing
me,
off
it's
when people.
ethics.
Okay. Agreed.
Like when you get those messages in your inbox on the social media, I feel a strong connection or blasey blasey and all kind of stupid stuff. I'd be like, and it's some generic something. I'd be like, did you get this off of AI or what?
The bad thing is people fall for those though, because
Yes, I
that's
didn't tell them. I'm like, no ethical practitioner will do
Mhm.
that.
I agree.
I was like, I'm not ever DMing anybody unless they tell me to DM them something. I said, but I'm not, that's no, I'm not doing that. I said, because for me, I think if you're always on, when the hell are you resting?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
You
That
know
makes
what
me
I mean?
feel better because sometimes I'm like when I hear people like all the time, I'm like, should I be more on? Like, should I be trying to pick up more things from my environment? Because like I don't unless I purposely intend to do it.
And some of them I don't think are even real.
Okay. Or maybe it's just not my gift
Because
to.
somebody did that to me in Costco one day, and I was like, to myself, my first thought was, yeah, I don't even know you. And then my second thought was, I listened to what she said, and it was bullshit. And that was almost, I had to just, I just had to take a breath,
Okay.
because I mean, I didn't want to like, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings,
Okay.
but, on the second thing is, why would you do that?
Okay. Well, I'm
And
gonna keep this
especially
in mind.
all wrong. I was like, what? I'm like, yes, because she said something about, you're looking for your soulmate. And I thought to myself, you already found him. You're a few years too late.
Well, I have a crazy story about that because I like to practice a lot, right? And
Yeah.
so I was on this Facebook group and this girl posted like a photo of herself. And I think it might be a foreign group. I'm not sure if it's in the UK or not. And she's like, okay, I'm going to do a general reading. And so I did. And so I do them by kind of speaking to your guides. So a new thing I've started doing is speaking to you also, like your energy, your
Your
spirit.
higher self.
And so they told me, but they snitched on her because she asked to be read and they told me gender reassignment surgery. And I was like, what? So I wrote it down and I wrote everything else I got. And then I went and like, I was like curious but I wasn't going to put that in the post. So I didn't say it. But then I looked at her again and I was like, And I showed my husband, he was like, yeah, there's used to be an Adam's apple. And I was like, what? So I went back and looked at some old photos and I was like, oh,
Isn't it something how they know?
really, he did. Because I had no clue. I just thought it was like a cool
Yeah,
looking person.
I don't usually know either. Not because my husband be like, that's a. I said, oh, is it?
Yeah, well, literally their spirit told me, and I was like, and so, so I mentioned it to them on the side, and I didn't even exactly say that because the whole point is just supposed to give you validation. So I was like, I saw something like around gender, and they're like, yeah, okay, and I was like, okay, got it, So I just kept on moving, but yeah, the I thought that was really interesting. That's what I mean. Like I feel like I don't want people invading and reading my energy without me asking, and but
Absolutely.
in that case, they asked for it, but.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I have a couple of groups. I do that same thing. Read the
It's
picture,
the
which
picture stuff is
I let
fun.
my husband read one day the pictures, and girl, he got like more than I did.
Okay, that takes us to another thing is I didn't realize because everyone acts like because I have this woman right now. She keeps sending me these not keep. So she sent me a couple emails. I met her recently and I told her about what I can do and stuff just casually because we were in like a mediumship practice group and we were reading each other. And she was just like in awe. And she was like, you should be in the advanced class. And what are you doing? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I was like, I'm still learning. And she was like, no, we just kept going back and forth. And she was like, you can speak to what? Just so she emailed me after to just be like, try to convince me that like this is a special gift. And she's like, I could never get to where you're at. She's like, we both started on the same time. And I was like, no, I was like, but I started in 4 years ago, actually. That's why I can create the link and stuff because like I didn't know I was practicing, but it's different. But like the point is that she thinks she can't learn this. But that's what I mean because like all the other classes that I've seen and stuff, they can teach you mediumship, they can teach you psychic work. So in my mediumship class, there's brand new people in there, and she gives us people to practice with. So she'll pair you up. And so all you have to do is see the person's face and then their name, and then you take 10 minutes to write down all the impressions you get, right? And most of the people in the class who do not consider themselves psychic did extremely well. And so I think a lot of this stuff is just that we don't try. Because she kept saying, like, the woman kept saying, I can't talk to animals. And I was like, try it. I
Well,
was
the
like,
other
I,
part is too, we don't trust,
yeah,
because or like something happened. Like I can say that in my case, um, I experienced this as a child, and I was able to, oh, I was able to see the people like, okay, so like we would go and visit somebody or something because my grandmother was pastor. And she was always, going to visit somebody and pray over the sick people and all of that kind of stuff because, that's the kind of stuff they did. She was Pentecostal. And we always would have these little healing services in little states like Georgia, where I'm from, and then South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, you name it. We were all over those places, Alabama. And so we go to these little churches and she'd have these healing services. And girl, the little churches were probably about the size of somebody's living room. The whole church. But we'd have these healing services and people would come to get healed. And so my grandma would bring me up in front of the church. I think I was 3 or 4 years old to lay hands on people and pray. So I knew that I was supposed to, be a healer from a child. And then later, a couple of years later, I started seeing the dead people, and it was the craziest thing because I would see them like, say, like if we came to see you. Sometimes the people weren't even, or they didn't know they were sick. You know what I mean? Or something like that. It wasn't like people that were sick unto death. Now, those people I did see, but, like the ones we went to pray for because they was on their way out. It was in the waiting room, death's waiting room.
mhm.
And we would go pray for them and stuff, and I would see them. What would happen is I would get a snippet and I would see them in the casket. I would see them in the casket with whatever they had on. And so what freaked me out was when we went to the funeral and they had on what I saw them having on in the casket in the little snippet vision I had. And so that was my experience at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't know have anybody to talk to but my grandmother. I talked to her because who do you tell that kind of stuff at, I don't know, 6 or 7?
Well, plus a lot of people like they discount it and say, oh, or oh, you just have an imaginary friend, or oh, no, you didn't see that, or whatever. So I try really hard with my kids not to do that. And
Yes,
my oldest can absolutely see things and it scares the goodness gracious out of her. But on the plus side, since I'm more into it now,
you can help her.
um, I can because like she had a light switch on in her room recently, just on its own. And I told her, I was like, oh, it's just so and so. And she was like, oh, and then she went to sleep. Like, so I mean, we're normalizing things to the point where like she knows like nothing is going to get you. It's okay. My youngest, my oldest knows how to freak my youngest out. She'll be like, oh, I just saw something. I'm noticing something. She says it just to get the youngest one to go away. And then she ends up in my bed for the rest of the night. But I think my youngest has been able to too, because back in the day when she was younger, before I really was knew what was going on, she used to have an imaginary friend, and his name was Tommy. It was a girl named Tommy, and so she'd tell me, and she'd just be talking to it, and I was just thinking like, okay, you know. But then at one point, I was wondering if it could be real, but now in hindsight, I'm like, probably. And we were at some fair recently, and this woman was like, "Get her a black tourmaline bracelet," and I was like, "For what?" And she was like, "Her gift. She's very bright. She can see that." I was like, "Huh." And so we tested those Zener cards, the ones that have like the shapes on the. Because one of the things in my class that I'm in, they were like, just do the Zener cards, practice with those. And my teacher's like, oh, you probably won't get very many of them, but just do it. Doesn't mean you're not psychic. You know, I'm very psychic and I don't get hardly any of them. I was like, okay. So we both played with them. I had a very high percentage of getting them right, which was shocking to me. And then she was like 90% accurate. It was crazy. So like they're just that this is the best, this is the most like important time to like not make like not freak them out and support them so they don't shut it off. Because I
Yes,
feel like gifts like they're life changing. It's to the point where, like, with all this stuff going on in the world right now, I'm not actually scared, you know, because I know when you pass, you're not gone and you're actually pretty darn happy. Not encouraging that to happen for anybody because we're supposed to be here and learn and do all that fun stuff. And it's a cool experience to be in the body, but we'll be fine. And it also, I'm realizing we have a lot more power than we realize. And they don't want you to know that.
that's
And
right.
that's kind of my mission and goal, I think, as I get further into this, is I don't know if it's going to be teaching or what, but basically kind of being a way shower to a degree and helping wake people up because we need to be awake and realize that we're all very connected and we can't do if your neighbor's not doing well, you're not going to do well, right?
It's what is it? It's the law of one,
What's that?
and it's the law of one, knowing that we are all one
Exactly.
because we are one with the source,
Yeah.
and I think that's huge with you waking up and doing the things you're doing and your children, and you can see that in them, and also help them and nurture it and grow. So just like you said, normalize. I regret that with mine growing up because I raised them deep in the church. But they have all woken up. Matter of fact,
Oh,
they did before I was. So they all, do their thing. Like I tell them, I said, the main thing that I'm grateful for raising y'all in the church is just that I know that you know how to pray.
yes.
You
Which
know,
is man,
because
you
yeah,
know.
absolutely. So I was like, but yeah, so they're good, and I'm so excited about it. But I wish that I was in this space when they were, younger, so that I could be that type of guy for them. But you know what? I realized everything always works out.
Right?
Always.
That Yeah, it makes me think about like the type of music that I've been realizing how much power our words have
Yep.
and even frequency and the music that we're listening to and the stuff that we're being fed is trash to a large degree. And
They
I
not
also,
like us.
huh?
I said, but they not like us.
I know. Oh my God, that song, I can't get it out of my head. It's everywhere.
I know.
I was doing a dog reading and I kept hearing it and I was like, does your dog like that song? She was like, it was on during the Super Bowl and he was right underneath it. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. But like I didn't realize how much animals like music. Like
Yeah.
even horses. I had a horse and the way I got the validation because I was reading this one photo, just practicing, and I got multiple things, but I saw someone else got the exact same things that I did. And one of them in particular was that the horse, number one, didn't like its name. I've seen three different readers said that the horse didn't like its name. He was very, very emphatic about that, but then also music. like two other people were like, he wants to hear me, he likes music. And the horse told me like country music. So they must have been playing it around him or something. But I've had multiple animals indicate that they like a certain type of music. And I was like, mind blown, had no idea.
That is so cool. Oh, that is so cool. If I had an animal, I would definitely let you read them. But I think I'm gonna probably I may do that for my children because my boy has what do they have? They have two dogs and a cat now because they got my grandmother, her grandmother's familiar. And she passed away last year. And so they went over there and they got her cat. So now they have the two dogs and a cat. So I would love it. I think I'm gonna have to set that up so you can read their animals. Because I think they
I,
will just love that because they're woo too.
I really enjoy it. Multiple animal households, though. I just have to warn sometimes if you just pick one, sometimes another one swoops in there. And then
I
if you
don't think
have
they'll care which one it is.
okay. And
You know
also
what
if
I
they have
mean?
departed ones, sometimes the departed ones sneak in there.
Yeah,
And
she
I
had
don't
one that she'd had for years or something like that. Because I remember it was a couple of years ago, but because my son was like, Mom, Marianne is just crying. I was like, well, what is wrong? You know, they don't have no kids together. He has one, but I was like, what is wrong? She lost her dog that she had for however long, 10 years or something. I can't remember. And I was like, oh, I said, okay, well, all right, well, tell her I love her. So I was
know.
like, all right, so you're right. That dog might slip in there. All right,
Well,
well, we're gonna land this plane.
all right.
So let the people know. Oh, I have one more question that I ask everyone. Um, if there was anything in the world that you could change, what would that be and why?
Um, I think it's because I've been thinking about traveling lately, like getting out of the country more, and it would be for people of color to feel comfortable and safe traveling anywhere. So, I've always wanted to go to Italy after I read Eat, Pray, Love, and then I was really disappointed to be reading all kinds of people of like Black people in particular experiences there and how they've been treated. And then same thing for like Spain. And so it's just like I started getting this feeling of like, where can I go where I like feel comfortable? And it would just be nice to just I want to be a world traveler, and I'm not going to let that stop me, but
No,
it would be really nice.
no, because you know why? Everybody has different experiences and it's based on them.
Yeah,
Because I've heard that before too, where people said, oh, such and such a place is racist and this and that. And we've gone and we've not had those problems.
good.
You
That's
know, so and the other part too is, I don't know, I set intentions like that too.
a good idea.
I set those intentions. I said, you know what, no, because this does not have to be this way. And it might be this way for her. It ain't gonna be that way for me.
I like that. That's way more empowered.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my current wish is just to feel I love that we're all different, but just it's okay. It's okay for us all to be different.
I'd like for it to be like it was in what was it, the 1400s and stuff? It was okay for us to be all kinds of things. You
Was it?
know? Yeah. It was after that, I think going into the 1500s and stuff, that they started having issues, and I honestly believe that it was a jealousy thing, because black don't crack. And
Wow.
I really truly believe that. It's like, and I used to think, I used to think God did this for us because he knew how much hell we was gonna go through in this world. And he said, at least let them look good for a long time,
Well, could be.
but yes. So let the people know where is the best place to connect with you and if you have any final words.
My site is www.zinnia, ZINNIACLAIRE, zinniaclaire.com. And that's where you can contact me. And I think I have links to my socials on there. But if you're ever interested in like a mediumship session or a psychic session or my current jam and favorites so far as the animal communication, then that's where you would do that.
Love it, love it. And all of her details will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to click her links and all of that stuff, as well as her bio. So definitely, definitely check her out. So I am so, so appreciative of this time. I'm appreciative of your energy. I know that my audience is going to be raving, and I'm super excited about that. Um, we probably are going to do something else because I feel a collaboration. I don't know what, but I feel it. So just, be on the lookout. But we want to thank you for watching us on Straight Out of Savannah. This has been such a phenomenal, phenomenal conversation. And I hope that you got as much out of it as we did, because I
I
think it's
did. Fun
amazing.
talk.
Yeah, so much fun. So have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, weekend, whatever it is that you're catching this. And make sure that you like, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're seeing it, listening to it, or watching it. So again, thank you so much for joining us on Straight Out of Savannah. Bye now.